Good, how are you doing?
Saw that yawn. I saw that yawn, really.
Mr. Bird, he's got all the money. Yeah. I'm sure Randy could use some of that money.
I could. I can use anything.
Lance knows better than to come looking to both of us. Yeah. The previous community should have went.
Yeah, we've been in the pit too long.
That's right.
Wrestling around.
I'm on the phone with Sheriff Murray.
Yeah. I just what happens. I don't see it here. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we ready to get started? Let's call the roll.
Senator Albritton?
Here.
Chambliss? Here. Senator Beasley? Senator Coleman? Here. Senator Coleman Madison?
It's only 4.
Senator Elliott?
Here.
Senator Gavan? Senator Jones?
Here.
Senator Kelly?
Here.
Senator Livingston?
Here.
Senator Orr? Senator Price?
Here.
Senator Shonut? Senator Stewart? Senator Stutz? Senator Weaver?
All right, we have a quorum. Thank you. The events today, we're going to try to run through these fairly quickly. We're starting late, but the intent is to close early to make up for it. We're going to, on the agenda, we have SB 27. That bill is going to be carried over at the request of the sponsor. You'll find in your packet, though, that there's an SB 23. I think that's Senator Williams' clandestine effort to get on the committee. We'll turn that one down. So let's go ahead and get started with SB 83. And Senator Smitherman. Now, before you get started, let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, at the bottom of the agenda, we have a SB 60. We'll have a public hearing on that. And we have a sign-up sheet, I think, ready to go. If anybody wants to sign up, let us know, give us a holler or something. But we'll have everybody heard on that as we can. Senator Smitherman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is some legislation that's dealing with the indigent representation for people who the court assigned an attorney to assist them in legal matters. And of course, it's a court-appointed attorney. And if you look at the information that we passed out in front of you regarding the compensation reform, you can see how it's broken down in terms of what we are trying to get accomplished so that you can have representation. And have a good representation. One of the things that generally happen, and let me say this before I go into any other part of the bill, is that there's still a fluid on working regarding with finance to ultimately come to amount that from finance to what's adequate needed that will be presented to you as we move forward. So I wanted to say that to you from that perspective. But what you have, if you look at the old rates, you're just not going to get representation of people willing to represent him for $70. Okay, I'll just say that to you. And to give you a comparison and contrast, you know, I myself individually, I would probably charge somebody $350. See the difference? So it's you're not going to get representation. So this is to help design to get representation and have adequate funding for that. It says the proposed legislation would also increase the oversight over the appointing council system, a stronger mechanism for the Director of Office of Energy Service to refer review of Indigent Defense Services to Indigent Defense Advisory Boards set up in each judicial circuit to review the billing issue. An automated review provision for any attorney who bills at or above a certain annual threshold. And third, authority for an Indigent Defense Advisory Board to order remedial actions such as suspension of appointments or reimbursements of funds, or to refer extreme cases to the Alabama State Bar. So it is, in other words, it's not, with the added money comes added responsibility and added oversight. And at this time, if anybody have any questions, feel free to address those.
Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I do have some concerns about the caps in terms of inflation, and it sounds like the finance department has those concerns as well. As far as the rates go, I support you, Senator, on this. I don't know how people can, you know, have any overhead whatsoever and work on the $70 an hour.
That's right.
It's amazing what the overhead is, even in a small operation. And so I will support the bill today, but do want to work with you on the caps.
And I'll,
Senator, if I may question, are you suggesting that the caps are too high or too low?
I think they're too high.
They're too high? Okay. So you want to lower it down?
Not today, but
Just
eventually, yes. I think that's what the senator has suggested, that he's working with the finance on this, because I think their feelings are the same way. But if you look at an inflationary adjustment from the last time we did this, I think they're a little rich on that. Not that I'd want to have those caps on me, but you know, we just like you, we've got to keep run a tight ship.
Just checking. Go ahead, Senator Smith.
I was just going to say that that's why you heard me mention from the beginning about finances. It's ongoing, and we try to find what that medium is that everybody's comfortable with. It's just the fact that we, as you said, we definitely need to increase it. So, you know, we're flexible to work with that and look forward, you know, if you're allowed to move forward. In other words, we're not going to move this bill until we get it right. I just said that sitting here.
We have a motion for adoption and a second by, we got those? All right. Senator Jones, you had a question?
Just want to discuss a point. I'm supportive of your legislation, Senator, and I'll vote for it. I am wondering, though, why we're imposing the 6% interest rate. I understand right now that'd probably be breaking even, right?
Yeah.
But hopefully if things go the way we want them to go in a year or two, that would be a higher rate. Is that designed to prod them to get everybody paid up, or is that something you're willing to look at, making that kind of the market rate at the time? Because, you know, a couple of years ago, 6% would have been pretty high.
I'll be glad to look at it. You know, as I said about the finance part, you know, we're gonna work and try to come to that medium. You know, we have some good financial minds in here, and in fact, our chairman is a double mind. He's a financial mind and a lawyer. So I think that we'll be able to come to whatever it is that, you know, is reasonable and will fit the occasion. We're open-minded about it, 100%.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Stutz.
Thank you. Senator, what do you have to do to qualify to have to prove that you're indigent, to have an attorney appointed for you?
Well, you have to.
How does that process work?
I'll just tell you from my experiences on it. What you end up doing is fill out an application, and I think a lot of it is about your present income situation and your present financial structure, and then you present it to a judge, and then that judge makes a determination of whether that indigent person should get a chance to have representation. So that's how the process goes. It's strictly up to as it relates to.
So you have
Actually, he was bringing me up to the next legal level. No, it's an affidavit. Not just to put some information down there. You swear to it, and before the judge, and of course that's one of those things that if it's inaccurate, you can be found in contempt of court.
Okay, so you have to prove that you don't have the funds to pay your own attorney.
That's correct.
Okay.
Any other questions? We've got a motion and a second. Let's call the roll.
Senator Albritton?
Aye.
Senator Chambliss? Senator Beasley? Senator Coleman? Senator Elliott?
Aye.
Senator Levan? Senator Jones? Senator Kelly? Senator Livingston? Senator Orr? Senator Price? Senator Shonut? Senator Stewart? Senator Stutz? Senator Weaver?
Bill's given for a favorable report. Next bill.
Thank you all, committee, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank y'all.
Senator Bell, SB 84, filing fees.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Something that you love, correct? This is on the qualified domestic relations order, and in a divorce, it allows the individual to distribute part of their retirement plans or something of that nature to a third party, a spouse or something, without the hindrance of paying taxes or being penalized for it. And a lot of times when the judge signs the order, it goes, the company that's managing their portfolio will send some correction back, usually some little correction, and it gives 120 days so that individual does not have to refile in court, pay another filing fee and all of that. It will be a minimal expense that's from the state. I don't think it happens often, but it just happens every once in a while.
Thank you. Senator Orr.
Thank you. Senator Bell, thank you for bringing this bill. Members, this comes from a circuit judge in my area, and Senator Bell was gracious enough to, since I get accused of handling a lot of bills or filing a lot of bills, I've tried to give them out.
That was in your committee.
Appreciate, I get accused for a lot of things, and that's true. Senator Bell, being an attorney, I appreciate his willingness to bring this bill. Common sense, we're penalizing people going through a divorce by making them refile and pay the filing fee for these quadros that come through where you get the assets dedicated from Fidelity or Vanguard or wherever the retirement fund is located. So I'd like to go ahead and move favorable, Mr. Chairman, if that's.
We have a motion. We have a second. Just a moment. Do we have any other questions? Oh, Senator Coleman. Madison.
If I'm representing somebody on a divorce, the wife gets 50%, they split the retirement. So she gets 50% of the husband's retirement. Then you have to do what's called a quadro. You submit it to the court does it, then it goes, say Fidelity's managing that 401k. It goes to Fidelity, and Fidelity sends back, well, we need this changed, or that changed in it, to know what order for us to basically open up another account for the wife so she don't get penalized with taxes and taking it out early. So they'll transfer it over. Well, if it comes back, then she's got to pay another filing fee to do that. A lot of times those happen within 120 days of the quadro being signed by the court or the divorce order by the court. So it just saves those individuals from paying another fee for something that that they didn't create. It's created by the company.
Any other questions? We got a motion and a second. Any objection to previous roll? No objection. Bill's given a favorable report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Now we'll call our favorite one today, SB 60. We've got a public hearing. I have 3 individuals signed up, I think, and we'll start with Is that Mr.
May I
Callahan?
present the bill first, Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind?
If you'd like to, I apologize.
That's okay.
No.
Thank you.
Senator Orr, would
Thank
you
you.
speak
All right.
on your bill?
Yeah, seeing that there's no pros coming, I kicked an anthill on that in my attempt to have the people that walk the halls come visit each and every one of you. I think I was successful in that. But I wanted you, again, if you're listening to the ETF, maybe I get to be too ideological sometimes, but let me explain where we are and why this bill. I've had it in 2019. I was visited by somebody who said, you from the Birmingham area actually said, you ought to refile that inland port bill that you had several years ago. So happy me, dusted it off, got the numbers changed on it as far as the dates and refiled it. As you see, there are a whole host of co-sponsors on this, but I think it's important. I think it's something we ought to consider. So we've invested a lot in the Mobile port. As a state, as the feds, Senator Shelby, and dredging that port, we put education dollars towards that port last year. And so we've put a lot as a state into it. So if you are going to be bringing larger ships with more TEUs or containers coming in, where are those containers going to go? They don't just sit in Mobile. They've got to be distributed throughout the Southeast. All right, what is our state's infrastructure upstream to receive all these containers? Not great. Now, we have an inland port in Montgomery that is starting to form. We have one in Birmingham that is starting to take shape. There are river ports across the state in Sumter County, a rural county. I have one in my area. There's one in Florence. They're scattered on the navigable rivers of the state as well. This bill, as you see, it's not limited to barges, where you take the containers off and put them on a barge in Mobile and put them upstream. It also includes rail intermodals. If you look on lines 83 to 86, it mentions what it qualifies, and more or less it's barge and rail. But think of how we as a state need to prepare ourselves to facilitate all the containers that we want and hope come through Mobile. We need to improve and elevate in our in-state infrastructure to receive those goods. And now let me flip all that on its head. Not only for imports, but also for exports, because when you have an intermodal facility, generally within 100 miles of that facility, they'll take it off the barge or the train that came from Mobile, and they'll distribute it locally, and locally being defined at around 100 miles or less, to the various companies there. And then the converse works. Company located in Alabama, put it on the truck, take it to the intermodal, 100 miles or less away, take it down to Mobile, and export it. So that's how it would work. But again, our infrastructure, we're slow to get there with Montgomery, Birmingham, other areas of the state. We've got some rudimentary infrastructure, but it could be a lot better. Other states have done this really successfully. Georgia, South Carolina, Georgia out of Savannah, South Carolina out of Charleston, in their upstream infrastructure, and it really does help business growth, particularly those that want to export as well. So, you're talking about a lot of jobs here, not just importing things perhaps from China. So $5 million didn't seem like a whole lot of money. Now, kick that anthill of those that certainly interested in the road and bridge dollars, and they don't want to see, money taken out of that. And you heard from all of them. But this is a transportation-related item. Those of you who have to drive Interstate 65, think about if we had more on the barges and more on the rail, that might help the congestion that we see on 65. And if you're an environmentalist, would certainly reduce the emissions that you see from that. I'm a realist. We're not voting on this today. I think it's an important step for our state. Again, I'm also becoming more and more of a realist. But we need to do something to help develop our upstream infrastructure, rail and barge, as we go forward. So now you hear from the proponents saying, don't take our money. So, Mr. Chairman, thank you for the and they'll say, oh, we agree with Senator Orr and we like his proposal and we think it's very important, but he just needs to go find another funding source. So this is transportation funding, but I'm also, like I said, a realist. Thank you.
You're welcome. And I have an option for you coming up. We'll discuss that later, too.
I hope it doesn't come from the children.
No, sir, it won't. The minors can't participate. Anyway,
Oh, we know. It's the all-encompassing, make everybody happy bill.
Mrs. Tony Horn.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members. I'm Tony Harris, representing the Department of Transportation. I bring you greetings from Transportation Director John Cooper, whose schedule did not allow him to be here today because of a long-standing meeting that had been on his calendar. So far this fiscal year, we have awarded contracts for 69 construction and maintenance projects for a total of about $211 million. Nearly all of those are 80% federal and 20% state match, and I'll come back and explain why that's important. This is the first fiscal year since 2010 where the ALDOT budget has not included significant diversions from our funds. If you cast way back to the 2010 legislative session, the budget preparation for FY11 diverted $35 million to the courts and $28.5 million to public safety. And that helped balance the general fund that year. It was said at the time that would be a one-time diversion, but it continued for 13 years. This is the first full year those have stopped. To use an accounting term, there's an opportunity cost to the department and to the traveling public to the tune of around $700 million in road and bridge improvements not made while those diversions were coming from the Public Road and Bridge Fund. Just as that diversion ends, SB 60 proposes another diversion. And I will say, Senator Orr, we need to be looking at our inland ports. Senator Orr has been innovative and a leader in looking for ways to fund things, and I would say he is the father of the Transportation Infrastructure Bank, which now has provided loans at the state's borrowing rate to some small governments around the state, so very important. At ALDOT, we're grateful, though, for the full restoration of the $63.5 million that had been diverted from the Public Road and Bridge Fund. It was critical because the latest federal funding act, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act passed in 2021, contains an increase in federal funds to Alabama that requires more state match. We needed those diversions restored this year to the Public Road and Bridge Fund to help match that new federal funding. A $5 million diversion from the Public Road and Bridge Fund actually costs us, or has the potential to cost us, $25 million, because $5 million would match $20 million in federal. So we hope we can sustain matching our existing level of federal funding with the proceeds to the Public Road and Bridge Fund without needing to pull from the Rebuild Alabama Act, which would certainly have been necessary without the restoration. SB 60 also comes at a time where we have just used the department's discretion to increase the annual grant program created by the Rebuild Alabama Act from the prescribed $10 million to $15 million for the current fiscal year. The annual grant program, along with the A-Trip 2 program, both created by the Rebuild Alabama Act, and the A-Trip 2 program is now at $40 million, which is $10 million above the minimum stated in the Act, go directly to benefit cities and counties across Alabama and have helped fund something in every district. So clearly, SB 60 would be a setback and a challenge for us. There's a program already at ADECA funded that provides a model for how Inland Port's grant program might be established. A grant program for Alabama's general aviation airports is currently funded at $3.5 million from the general fund to the ADECA budget, and through a memorandum of agreement is administered by ALDOT. I say all that to simply say this. On behalf of the department, for Alabama's 11,000 miles of roadway and 5,600 bridges under the jurisdiction of the department, for all that ALDOT does above and beyond for Alabama cities and counties, I'm asking this committee to look for another option rather than reinstituting a diversion from the Public Road and Bridge Fund. With that, I'll be happy to take any questions now or at any time as we progress through.
Thank you, Mr. Harris.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time. Mr. Skip Poe?
Yes, that's right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Senators. I'm Skip Poe. I'm representing the Alabama Road Builders Association. And for the record, y'all know we're contractors in general. And so first and foremost, we always support infrastructure development. And Senator Orr's right. This is an important step, and we agree to that. But however, Senate Bill 60 proposes an annual transfer of $5 million from the Public Road and Bridge Fund to ADECA to support certain inland ports, as we've all heard. And we're opposed to that transfer. As Tony said, the Public Road and Bridge Fund is ALDOT's source for state matches to federal funds. And looking ahead to the federal IIJA funds anticipated for the next 2 fiscal years in 25 and 26, it's anticipated there's a $60 million shortfall in the Public Road and Bridge Fund. And so Senate Bill 60's proposed transfers would increase that projected shortfall and magnify the problem. And while we're working hard to resolve the potential funding issues, this bill is a step that's in the opposite direction. Further, we consider the shortfall in any activity counterproductive to resolving that as a threat to rebuild Alabama, since realistically, that's going to be the default source when you need to match federal funds. And so that just contributes to the problem of it's going to take away from what Rebuild Alabama is supposed to do if the Public Road and Bridge Fund becomes insufficient. As Tony outlined, there's been numerous transfers over the last 13 years, and that's hurt ALDOT's ability to turn around and construct the infrastructure it needs to do. And we thank the legislatures to turn around and try to end those last year. So.
Thank you, Mr. Poe. Appreciate it. We have a proponent that has jumped in, Mr. Darrell Perkins.
Senators, thank you. I have to stay in the gap for my senator.
Thank you, Darrell. I'm with you, man.
I represent WACO. WACO is a supply chain company. They own 184 acres at the old U.S. Steel site in Birmingham. They manage a railway switching yard in Tuscaloosa, and they also manage the Decatur Morgan Port. They are a $3 billion company, but when this was done in 2019, out of that small allocation of $5 million, over the course of the state that everybody got a part of, there were 3 warehouses built, there were dock walls repaired, there were things done to help efficiency, particularly with the smaller ports who don't get a lot of money. So all that helps Mobile Port to be more efficient, to get their tonnage up even higher. So inland ports play a crucial role. We're not disputing the concern around the funding source. I'm merely making the statement that, and the argument that inland ports, as others have said, are crucial and need to be looked at in a holistic way because it's one ecosystem. And so if we're going to build up south, we have to build up the entire state. A lot of you have inland ports in your districts, and they don't function as well as they should because they don't have the funding source. And if we look at that properly, we will, of course, it's job creation. It's also taking trucks off the road. It's so many things, but it's part of the complete ecosystem that we have not paid a lot of attention to, and we need to pay more. Thank you, Senators.
Thank you. We have one more, Mr. Trey Czar. And you are an opponent. All right.
Yes, sir, Senator. Thank you. My name's Trey Sarr, and I represent Alabama AGC, Associated General Contractors. We join the Road Builders Association and the Department of Transportation in opposing Senate Bill 60. Senate Bill 60, as you've heard, is not new. The legislature allocated $5 million to ADECA in 2019 for the very grant program that Senate Bill 60 would establish, and Governor Ivey awarded grants to various entities that year. What's different between Senate Bill 60 and the grant program established in 2020 is the funding source. Instead of increasing ADECA's budget or doing it via supplemental appropriation, Senate Bill 60 proposes an annual transfer of $5 million from the Public Road and Bridge Fund. The Public Road and Bridge Fund is ALDOT's source of matching federal funds. And looking ahead to the federal IIJA funds, ALDOT's already projecting a shortfall of up to $60 million in terms of state matching funds needed. Now, to be clear, Alabama AGC does not oppose our ports or waterways or any type of infrastructure investment in that sense. We simply oppose using money allocated for ALDOT's Road and Bridge Fund to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments, suggestions? Well, keep in mind that we have the budget ready, in our hands now. If you have requests or comments or suggestions or whatever, start bringing them into me, and we'll be putting particular stickers on them. Just Senator Madison first.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, I support this bill. I support ALDOT and all that they do. We really appreciate improvements that we made around the state. As I drive, not only in my district, but throughout the state, I think everybody is proud when they see road projects in rural and urban areas, but I enjoy particularly riding in the rural areas where I see improvements in roads and things like this, and sometimes it happens 5 or 10 years, and then you see development because you know that is coming. So there's a lot. However, inland ports are part of transportation. We are sitting in what used to be the highway department. They changed it to transportation because we know that it's not just about highways and roads. Ports and inland ports are part of that, as Darrell has said, ecosystem, the whole 9 yards as far as transportation of goods and products. And the thing about ports is the fact that it's there. We have some of the greatest navigable waterways anywhere. We are not utilizing them fully. Inland ports allow us to take the pressure off of the one in Mobile, but at the same time, help us to move products from our southern areas all the way up to the northern and throughout. And the other thing about it is that it doesn't require, while we have some build out, it's not like you're building roads. When you start building roads, that's completely construction. Waterways are there. And we are not fully utilizing it. And so I looked at when we went to the Southern Conference of Legislators in Savannah, I was just wowed. I don't think I had really ever seen anything like that when you start talking about ports. And we have a great one in Mobile. But I didn't realize the potential that we have with our inland ports. And many of them, like the one at Waco, that's attached to what used to be a USX site in Ansley, that has all the infrastructure that's there. It's tied to rail. You have the utilities and everything, but that one goes straight to the port where you can transfer from rail to a barge to go straight down there. But we are not utilizing that, and it's been closed for a long time. So it's time for us to open up and use all of our resources. And I understand what ALDOT is saying, that you're looking at this money as far as being taken away, but as far as the total economy of the state, I don't want us to be like Alabama, just a boll weevil. You know, I always have a story. Well, we just invested in one commodity. We need to diversify, and we need to use all the resources that we have. The waterways are there, and we need to develop them.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Orr.
I just want to thank the chairman for putting the bill up. Members, you've heard. I might come talk to you, see what your feel your pulse. It's a tough call, I get it, but out of the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars Aldott has, maybe they can afford a crumb. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Senator Kelly, you had a comment?
I just want to commend Senator Orr as being the father that I didn't know till now. That's going to change the way I address him in the future. And I've never seen a senator speak for and against his own bill, so I commend you for that, sir.
With that, we better adjourn. Thank you.